Hey everyone, it's Miss Burkholz,
Hello, it's Mrs. Klein.
and we're in lesson 25, The Rise of the Warrior Class in Japan. This is on page 347 in our TCI book, and our question today is, what was the role of the samurai in the military society of medieval Japan?
All right, you guys, there's actually a lot of vocabulary words, comparatively speaking, in this lesson. They are Amida Buddhism, Bushido, Daimyo, martial arts, restoration, samurai, shogun, and Zen Buddhism.
All right, for our introduction, during the Heian period, Japan experienced a golden age. That period was followed by civil war. During this time of strife, a powerful warrior class arose, the samurai.
Minamoto Yoritomo came to power in Japan in 1185, and by 1192 had taken the title of shogun, or commander-in-chief. Yoritomo did not replace the emperor, but he did set up a military government with its own capital in the city of Kamakura.
The start of the Kamakura government marked the beginning of the new era in Japanese history. Eventually, professional warriors, the samurai, became Japan's ruling class. Over time, an elaborate culture and code of conduct grew up around the samurai.
All right, number one, section one, the rise of the samurai. The military government established by Minamoto Yoritomo was led by a shogun, or commander-in-chief. Although emperors continued to rule in name, the real power shifted to the shoguns.
Samurai under the shoguns. Shoguns, such as Yoritomo and his successors, rewarded warriors, or samurai, with appointments to office and land grants. In return, the samurai pledged to serve and protect the shogun.
Kind of sounds a little bit like feudalism, right, you guys?
It does.
All right. The rise of the samurai brought a new emphasis on military values in Japanese culture. All samurai trained in the arts of war, especially archery. During this period, women as well as men could be samurai, so girls and boys alike were trained to harden their feelings and to use weapons.
By the 14th century, Japan's warrior society resembled the lord-vassal system of medieval Europe. The shogun now ruled with the help of warrior lords called daimyos, who in turn were supported by large numbers of samurai.
In the late 15th century, Japan fell into chaos as daimyos warred with one another for land and power. Samurai fought fierce battles on behalf of their lords.
In 1603, the last of these leaders, Tokugawa Ieyasu, became shogun and established a new capital in Edo, present-day Tokyo.
All right, section two, the samurai's armor and weapons. The samurai was first and foremost a warrior. Let's look at what the samurai wore in battle and the weapons they used.
Samurai went into battle dressed in heavy armor under which was a colorful robe called a kimono and baggy trousers. This type of armor was strong yet flexible enough for the samurai to move freely.
Okay, all right. Weapons. Samurai fought with bows and arrows, spears and swords. The samurai's most prized weapons, however, were their swords. Japanese sword makers were excellent craftsmen, and samurai swords were considered the finest in the world.
Wearing a sword was the privilege and right of the samurai, and swords were passed down through generations of warrior families and given as prizes to loyal warriors.
All right, military training and fighting. The way the first samurai warriors trained and fought was called the way of the horse and the bow. Later, the art of swordsmanship became more important than archery.
Learning the skills of a samurai required extensive training. They also learned how to fight without weapons by using martial arts. This type of fighting often involves using an opponent's strength against him.
All right, mental training. A samurai's education in the art of war included mental training. Samurai had to develop self-control so that they could overcome emotions that might interfere with fighting, especially the fear of death. They also learned to always be alert and prepared to fight.
Training and preparedness. A samurai could never relax because an attack could come when least expected, even while playing music or dancing. For this reason, samurai had to develop a, quote, sixth sense about danger and did so through long and grueling training.
All right, training in writing and literature. By the more peaceful 17th century, samurai had to be students of culture as well as fierce warriors. They were expected to be educated in both writing and literature.
Samurai practiced calligraphy, the art of beautiful writing. A calligrapher's main tools were a brush, a block of ink, and paper or silk.
Samurai also wrote poetry. One famous samurai poet was Matsuo Basho, who invented a new form of short poetry that was later called haiku. A haiku has 3 lines of 5, 7, and 5 syllables, making 17 syllables in all.
Section 6, Training for the Tea Ceremony. Another aspect of culture that samurai studied was the tea ceremony. The tea ceremony fostered a spirit of harmony, reverence, and calm among these warriors, and it also served as an important way to form political alliances.
All right, section 7, training in spiritual strength. Most samurai were Buddhists. Two forms of Buddhism that became popular in Japan were Amida and Zen. Samurai were drawn to both kinds of Buddhism, but especially to Zen.
Amida Buddhism. In the 12th century, a monk named Honen founded a popular form of Buddhism, Amida Buddhism. These Buddhists believed that all people could reach paradise.
All right, Zen Buddhism. The form of Buddhism called Zen appealed to many samurai because of its emphasis on effort and discipline. Zen stresses self-reliance and achieving enlightenment through meditation.
To reach enlightenment, Zen Buddhists meditate for hours, during which they must sit erect and cross-legged without moving. According to the beliefs of Zen Buddhism, becoming enlightened requires giving up everyday logical thinking.
All right, Section 8, the Code of Bushido and Samurai Values. The Samurai Code, Zen Buddhism was a good match for the samurai way of life. Zen helped samurai learn discipline, focus their minds, and overcome their fear of death.
Section 8, the Code of Bushido and Samurai Values. The Samurai Code developed over several centuries. By the 17th century, it took a final form in Bushido, or the Way of the Warrior. The Code of Bushido, like the Code of Chivalry in medieval Europe, governed a samurai's life. It called on samurai to be honest, fair, and fearless in the face of death, and samurai were expected to value loyalty and personal honor even more than their lives.
All right, loyalty and personal honor. The supreme duty of samurai was to be so loyal to their lord that they would gladly die for him. Samurai were also expected to guard their personal honor. The smallest insult on the street could lead to a duel.
Ritual suicide. The price for failing to live up to the Code of Bushido was seppuku, or ritual suicide. There are many reasons for seppuku, including preserving personal honor and avoiding capture in battle. Samurai might also perform seppuku to pay for a crime, a shameful deed, or an insult to a person of a higher rank. Some samurai even killed themselves when their lord died, or as a form of protest against an injustice.
All right, Section 9, Women in Samurai Society. In the 12th century, samurai women enjoyed considerable status. When her husband died, she could inherit his property and perform the duties of a vassal. Although women rarely fought, they were expected to be as loyal and as brave as men.
Some women, like Tomoe Gozen, did take part in battles alongside men.
All right, as the warrior culture developed, women's position weakened, and by the 17th century, samurai men were the unquestioned lords of their households. According to one saying, when young, women should obey their fathers, when grown, their husbands, and when old, their sons.
Girls did not choose their own husbands. Instead, families arranged marriages for their daughters to increase their position and wealth. Wives were expected to bear sons, manage the home, and look after their husbands.
Not all Japanese women were treated the same way. Peasant women had some respect and independence because they worked alongside their husbands. However, in samurai families, women were completely under the men's control.
Section 10, comparing Japan and Europe in the Middle Ages. The Japan of the samurai period was both like and unlike Europe during the Middle Ages. In both societies, ties of loyalty and obligations bound lords and vassals.
The daimyos of Japan were like the landholding lords of medieval Europe. Both types of lords built castles and held estates that were worked by peasants. Both the samurai of Japan and the knights of Europe were warriors who wore armor, rode horses, and owned land. Just as European knights had a code of chivalry, the samurai had the code of Bushido. The samurai code, however, was much stricter because it demanded that a samurai kill himself to maintain his honor.
All right, Section 11, the influence of samurai values and traditions in modern times. Japan's warrior society lasted until 1868 when political upheavals led to the restoration of the emperor to ruling power. Modern Japan still feels the influence of the long era of the samurai.
In the 1940s, the Japanese who fought in World War II stayed true to the samurai warrior code. Many soldiers killed themselves rather than surrender, and suicide pilots crashed planes loaded with explosives into enemy battleships.
Japanese and other peoples around the world study martial arts. People in Japan continue to write haiku and practice calligraphy, and Zen gardens and the tea ceremony remain popular. And the samurai ideals of loyalty to family and respect for rank are still alive in modern Japan.
All right, so just to review, you guys, we learned about armor, weapons, military, mental, and spiritual training. In addition, we learned about training in writing, literature, and the tea ceremony, Bushido and samurai values, women samurai, Japan and Europe in the Middle Ages, and the samurai influence today.
All right, you guys, that wraps it up for our lesson 25, the rise of the warrior class in Japan.
Take care.
Bye.